Want to wish everybody, it's great to see everybody here. Good to see visitors and members alike. It's time to find a seat. We're glad you're all here tonight. We are blessed to have Dr. Don Patton here. He's a geologist and archaeologist, and a doctorate at that. He'll be bringing us a lesson to us tonight, like he has last couple of nights and earlier on Sunday as well. And we sure appreciate the lessons we've had so far. We want to thank each one of you for being here and hope you enjoy the lesson tonight. If you do want to be prepared for the end of the lesson, we do have an invitation song. It will not be on the screen, so if you want to find a book and mark number 835, it's going to be the invitation song. Again, at this point, let me just invite Dr. Don Patton to come up here. Thank you.
I would also remind you of the Q&A program after we finish the invitation. We hope that some of you have some questions. You might want to make notes as we go along. Now, if we can navigate here to the record of the rocks that we're talking about tonight. This is where I have fun. I suppose this would be my favorite night if we had to choose one. We're talking about the rocks. Don't have nearly enough time to tell you what we'd like to say, but we are not talking about all of the rocks. We're talking about sedimentary rocks this evening, the rocks laid down by water that are full of billions and billions of dead things. And we argue with people about what caused that. I think it's pretty obvious. But sedimentary rock is rock laid down by water, and it covers the continents, generally speaking. Some bare spots here and there, but generally covered to an average thickness of about 1.5 miles. Now, just think about that. You got 1.5 miles of rock laid down by water covering the continents, full of billions and billions of dead things. I think you can understand why the founders of the discipline of geology all believed that was caused by the flood. I think that's an excellent explanation. And that's exactly the way they explain what they see on Mars, as we pointed out, even when there's no water, virtually none. Discoverers, we pointed out, talked about catastrophic floods rapidly carved the surface of Mars because we got horizontal layers that are laid down by water. Well, I think they're right here. I think they need to be more objective on Earth. Billions and billions of dead things in rocks laid down by water. How did that happen? What explanation fits best is our subject this evening. We're told that it's slow and gradual. Now, if you were here last night, you understand why I don't agree. If you just look at the rocks, that doesn't work. But they say it's a low energy, gradually build up over millions of years. I think there is a better explanation, a high energy, catastrophic, year-long deposition. And I think we have abundant evidence for that. And we're told, though, this slow, gradual process recorded a progression that reflects evolution. And that's the way it's depicted in the textbooks. That's not the way it is when you dig down in the earth. That geologic column is not anywhere. It's built together by correlation. There is a general order that I think reflects a burial sequence that's relatively predictable, but it's not the evolutionary picture that is depicted. David Rapp is curator and dean of science at the Field Museum of Natural History, which is our largest fossil museum. He said in the years after Darwin, his advocates hoped to find, that is Darwin's advocates, hoped to find predictable progressions. Now, what would perhaps the leading authority in fossils in the United States say about that? In general, these have not been found, yet optimism has died hard and some pure fantasy has crept into the textbooks. Now, that's not a creationist speaking, that's the evolutionist acknowledging the facts. And we'll talk more about that, Lord willing, tomorrow night. I think the fossil record is a flood deposit, and that general order that we can see, relatively predictable, is a burial order, not a sequence of time. That idea was put forth in the book The Genesis Flood back in the early 60s, and it has caused a revolution and produced, spawned what's called the creation movement. It's interesting to notice the one that wrote the preface is a dyed-in-the-wool evolutionist. He said the facts of geology do fit. Well, a flood wouldn't do anything like, well, yes, it will do exactly. Even the evolutionist says that, and that there is a strong case for that explanation and a serious challenge to the uniformitarian picture that's taught in the colleges generally. Now, we've learned a little bit since the early 60s. Few things have come into focus, and I would recommend the global flood as an updated version of that. It'd be good to read both of them. And then more updates since this has been produced just in the last 10 years. Dr. Clary, and we don't have time to talk about it, has done some monumental work. He was an experienced petroleum geologist, one of the leaders in a major company, and he has access to a lot of information. He's taken 2,800 well logs from all over the world. That's when you drill down, you pull out what was in the middle, and you've got a log of a record of the rocks down over a mile, usually, 2,800 times all over the world. Put that into the computer and see how that fits together. And you can see movements across continents. You can see very obvious demonstration of mega sequences that would be predicted that fit exactly what we're saying. I think we have proof of the flood through that sequence. But generally speaking, just based on what we can see and what we see the geologist acknowledging, how do you look at the fossil record and tell which is the better explanation? How do you test the evolutionary explanation? Stephen Stanley, one of the more famous paleontologists, proposed this method, what he called the topsy-turvy method. He said this would disprove evolution. Any topsy-turvy sequence of fossils would force us to rethink our theory. If we see what's supposed to be at the top of the column down at the bottom, or what's at the bottom at the top, then they got serious problems. The topsy fossils would be the one at the bottom that you now see at the top. Well, that's all over the place. They pretty well acknowledge that, yeah, that's difficulty, but we see that all over. It's not uncommon. For example, one of the best illustrations would be the crab that we see here. It's not really a crab, but it's called a horseshoe crab, described here in 2021 in Nature. It's the oldest actual fossil of the horseshoe crab date to the Ordovician period. That's next to the bottom in that geologic column. 450, and that's a little out of date. It's now 480 million years ago, just to be tedious about it, playing the game their way to see how it works. they remain relatively unchanged. Now, this is the evolutionary source, nature, morphologically, in terms of their shape, any other way you want to measure it, since this extremely ancient date. Now, it's supposed to be at the bottom. The first members of this group look quite like what? The modern forms, and they're all over the place. Even though he acknowledges the last fossils became extinct 50 million years ago. Well, fossils don't become extinct, critters do, but I understand what he's saying. 50 million years ago down in the column, it's over. You don't find anything from there on. That's supposed to mean they're extinct, except we find them all over the place. That extinction idea is just falsified. We're looking here then at the horseshoe crab, which begins almost at the bottom. When it extinct 50 million years ago, that's supposed to be at the bottom, found, well, not quite at the top, well, all over the place today, that would be the top. But fossils disappeared 50 million years ago. That's not exactly what they predict. And as we suggested, it falsifies the extinction hypothesis. But the real test would be, and they would acknowledge, it's what's supposed to be up found down, or what we'll call the turvy fossils. They're supposed to be down, but they hadn't evolved yet, but they're found up. How if they hadn't evolved yet, that's just not going to work at all, and they acknowledge that. It demolishes the idea. As Richard Dawkins says, evolution could be so easily disproved if just a single fossil turned up in the wrong date order. That is, if it's supposed to be down here only, and, well, either way is a problem. But the real test, as he goes on to say, we should be very surprised, for example, to find fossil humans appearing in the record before mammals are supposed to have evolved. Mammals are not there yet, and here's humans. That's going to be a problem. Our whole modern theory of evolution would be utterly destroyed. So he's got his chin out and don't mind taking a swing. Here is a good example. These are modern human fossils, human bones, in the same formation with the dinosaurs. This is from the Dakota sandstone, where we have Dinosaur National Monument, supposed to be well over 100 million years ago, and they're perfectly modern human skeletons. I've got detailed measurements and photographs of the 11 individuals here, skulls, all which were then confiscated and hidden by the Smithsonian. So you can't see them today, except I've got good pictures. We went to the site. This is LaSalle, Utah, just down below the tourist site up at Moab. And it's an open pit copper mine. You see the backhoe down there digging, and 50 feet down in this layer that's supposed to be over 100 million years old, Dakota sandstone, you find fossil humans. This is still in the rock before we excavated it. That one was articulated together as in life. Most of them are just piled together. 11 individuals. There were 6 males, 5 females, and an infant. No broken bones, no tools. I think these are the people that missed the boat. It's not a recent burial. They're replaced, most of them, by malachite, a green mineral. Some of them turquoise, which is similar there in the copper mine. Jewelry grade turquoise, that's not recent. Several hundred years, probably 1,000 necessary to do that. But that's definitely a turvy fossil. when you find things like that, well, this is intrusionally buried. This is not where it belongs. They fell down a crack, or it was a mine cave-in. Well, there's no broken bones. An infant, 4 females. It doesn't sound like a mine cave-in to me. And where's the crack, and what's the evidence of that? Well, they're not supposed to be there, is the evidence. But it is conceivable that you've got an intrusional burial, but there's zero evidence for it, totally ad hoc. Recall, we're told, evolution would be utterly destroyed, it would be disproved, and so they have to come up with something. And they confiscated those bones and hid them. That's the way the BLM manager told me when he didn't know who I was. Yeah, we got rid of that tar baby, he called it, and sent them to the Smithsonian to be hidden. But again, good photographic evidence. Ironically, Dawkins goes on to say, in the same article, it's also the reason why creationists are so keen on the fake human footprints which were carved during the Depression to fool tourists at the dinosaur beds of Texas. Now, he's never been there. This is what he's got to say about it. But there's some human-looking footprints there. And the reason this is important, more important than the bones, which you initially think, well, now the bones would be better evidence. No. Bones can be eroded and redeposited. No evidence of that, but you can't do that with footprints. They are where they're at, not intrusionally buried. We go to Dinosaur Valley State Park, about 60 miles south and a little bit west of Dallas, and the Paluxy River, fast flowing stream, has eroded down to a print layer. Actually revealed about 1910 when they first reported slabs that were removed and tracks there in the river. Beautiful dinosaur tracks as well as human tracks were reported that early. But they became famous in the 40s when they were reported in the American Museum of Natural History. And they are spectacular. It's a great place to go spend a vacation and look at the dinosaur tracks. In the early 70s, Stan Taylor decided that he would investigate this. There were 2 human tracks, looked like they were coming out from the bank. He said, well, let's just follow them back up under the bank. You got 6 feet of alternating clay, limestone there in the bank. Well, let's just see what's under it. So using a rubber tire backhoe, he removed that, and sure enough, they continued back up under the bank. Standard explanation of those tracks that he had seen were, well, the Indians must have carved them under the water most of the time for some reason. Well, let's check that. Well, if it's under the alternating layers, it's not carved by the Indians. Obviously refutes the carved concept. Some of them were just spectacular. The mud push-up around it shows this is not erosion. The one that he uncovered 12 tracks, we uncovered a couple more extending that trail. And this one, this is a picture taken just immediately after it was exposed, so the details are very obvious. And you have to look at it carefully. Here is the dinosaur track, about 25 inches. And that's pretty standard. It varies some, but that's pretty much what you find. But look what stepped in the middle of it. Now, sometimes you find the human tracks across and sometimes beside. There are 134 dinosaur tracks and 14 tracks that look like this going right through the middle of them. Now, if they're stepping in each other's footprints, they're not 100 million years apart. You see 2 footprints in the sidewalk out front. This one was made 50 years after that one. You buy that? That's not going to fly, is it? certainly not 1,000,000 years apart for these tracks. There was a trail of 14. This one is on up ahead. And you see the 3 toes, and then the human stepped in this one. These are the 2 where you have them in the track, often across and beside. Looking at the side view of that same track, and then putting a human foot in it, you put your foot in it, you feel a molded shape. That's on our side. He's going to be on our side now. That's not possible that they're 100,000,000 years apart. And we've had a number of people do just that. Now this one is a right. Directly ahead ought to be a left, and that's what's directly ahead in a pace that you can march in. You have to stretch. These are 11.5-inch tracks. If his proportions are average, he'd have been 6'6". So he's moving along, but with a little effort, I can march just like he did. Now, this is the way it looked when we first saw it. Something going on there in the upper right, but we couldn't tell what that was until the next year, with a little bit more erosion, we could see, yep, there's a dinosaur track beside it. And here the human track is completely outside. Some of them had said, well, these tracks associated with the dinosaur tracks, that's a pad on the bottom of a dinosaur track. A human-shaped pad on the bottom of a dinosaur foot. I'm serious. But if you get it completely outside, that's not going to fly. Well, maybe you find lots of strange-looking things in rocks. Erosion does weird things. You look up on the mountain and you see the old man in the mountain. Now that has eroded, it's gone, but that's erosion. And you go over to Turkey and you see a really amazing example of the old man in the mountain. And you probably recognize him. Or what he looks like. The tourists are told, this is Trump up on the mountain here. Now, erosion did that. It does some pretty amazing things. Well, maybe right, left for 14, that's a bit of a reach. But how do you tell the difference between a rock that looks like a president? Did somebody carve that? Well, one of the ways you can tell the difference is if you see 4 old men in a mountain. You got a pretty good idea. This did not happen by erosion. When you get 14 in a right-left pattern, that's even better than 4 men on the mountain, isn't it? We analyzed this. We have toes in each one of those human-like tracks. You can distinguish right from left in 12, and they're all in the right spot, not right where lefts ought to be. Relatively consistent length, all have the human shape, and consistent right to left. We did a double-blind test at Kansas State in the psych department. Got real rough on these psych students. Tell me, is this a right or a left? In random, they just piled them life-size pictures. And 89% got just exactly what they should be. 2 of them, I don't think you can tell. So that's precisely what we predict. And when you have some of our critics speak on the subject, guess which 2 tracks they showed? Yeah, well, they're not telling the whole story. That's powerful evidence. That's really a perfect Turvey fossil. It's not intrusional. You can't do that with tracks. It's not carved. It was excavated from under the overburden. Not erosion, and a right-left pattern for a sequence of 14. That's good evidence. So what do they say? I presented about an hour-long presentation to 50 grad students and head of the department at University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Finished. The students turned to the head of the department, what are you going to say about this? And he kind of shuffled around and said, well, we don't know that there weren't dinosaurs back there with human feet. I said, well, I guess that's right. We don't know that. We also don't know that there weren't humans back there with dinosaur feet. Wouldn't that make about as much sense? Isn't it more reasonable to say these things that look like dinosaurs were made by dinosaurs? These things look like human feet made by humans. No. I said, if they were human feet, would they look any different? And he got up and walked out. At least 2 of those became creationists. There was grad students because I baptized them. Chuck Finsley was curator of the Dallas Museum of Natural History when we were working down here, and he wanted to display one of the dinosaurs that we'd excavated, an Acrocanthosaurus. We were kind of mean to him. We made him go down and look at the tracks, and then we'd negotiate. And he got upset and left. But he really wanted that dinosaur, so he came back. And then he got aggravated. The 3rd time he came down, he said, Dr. Patton, I've got an answer for you. I know what these human-looking tracks, I know how to explain that. He says, I think they were made by aliens. Curator of the Dallas Museum of Natural History, the best that he can come up with. I said, well, Chuck, if they're aliens, they'd have to be pretty smart from a galaxy far, far away, and maybe smarter than we are. What are they doing running around barefooted? And he left. We have fun. This is the answer. I mean, this is as good as it gets. He did come back later. And he said, I do have, well, yeah, aliens, human dinosaur feet, or you need more evidence. That always works, I guess. And we did find another trail up ahead. We don't have time to show you. If you want to see that, you can go online, and there's some great evidence in the second trail. If you're going to just make up stories, how about an alien dinosaur with human feet? Wouldn't that be as scientific as what they're imagining? Then we had an amazing find in 2000. Wow, look at that. A fellow had found a slab with a dinosaur foot in it, carried it home. It was caked with mud. It was probably a year later before he decided to clean it up and saw, wow, there is a human track there. Well, that's just, I'd have to say I admitted that looks almost too good to be true. Maybe somebody carved that. So we took it to the hospital to have a CAT scan, CT scan, and about 300 slices through it. Sometimes you can see structures underneath that are very definitive. And this one was one of the 300 scans. This is the slice, virtual slice through the slab right across the toes. And there is the dinosaur toe, and there is the great toe of the human in the slice. But look at the contours under the great toe, following contours. If it were carved, it would go across the structures. When they follow, this says, yep, this is a real track, verified. And the ball game's over. That's the end of the story as far as contention is concerned. I had Dr. Schaefersman from University of Texas come down. He was really upset about it. He said, my kids are seeing these things and want to know about it. I want to come see. He got within about 50 yards, and he said, well, I've been here. I hadn't seen any tracks. And he headed out. And I said, wait a minute, come on down, let me show you. No, I've been here. I can tell him I didn't see any tracks, and he left. That's what we have as opposition. I don't think they have answers. When I have a chance, one shot, this is what I present. I presented at University of Texas at Commerce, University of Texas A&M at Commerce. Invited to speak there to the physics department. Okay, I'm not a physicist. Now I'm going to talk about physics. I'm going to talk about geology. And we did make that presentation to about 50 grad students and the head of the department, the physics department. Finished, the head of the physics department stood up. He said, I think that presentation is absolutely unanswerable. You've convinced me. And he sat down. So that's not always the way it happens. Sometimes they're screaming and cussing, profane name calling. But they're honest people out there, and when you find them, it becomes obvious. Now, this is not the only place. We find evidence around the world. Let's travel down to Peru. And this is Dr. Javier Cabrera, performed the first heart transplants in Peru, established 3 teaching hospitals, one of the more famous physicians in Peru. He's recently passed away. But he had collected artifacts from the Inca tombs, and his father had done that, and especially some of the burial stones associated with that culture. And he continued doing that. He had about 11,000 of those burial stones in this huge castle that he had. Interesting story there, but we see in the tombs, and we were able to excavate some of them ourselves, this is a burial stone that we find typically associated with these mummies, amazingly well preserved. And this is the picture of what the culture is 2,000 years ago, and they just don't argue about that. They know when that occurred. And this one particularly is interesting because the Diplodocus type dinosaur here is shown with the dermal frills, the little stair steps on the back. We didn't know about that until 1990 when it was first published, or actually 92, in Geology. Prior to that, it looked like Sinclair represented on his side. He didn't know it had dermal frills. But they did 2,000 years ago down in Peru. There are 11,000 of these, and about a third of them have dinosaurs on them. Shades of Jurassic Park here. Upper right-hand corner has got the fellow by the foot. Some of them are just very literal. Some of them are more figurative, but this is hard to miss. They also have the dinosaurs on the grave cloths. The motif is pretty obvious that are there with the mummies. They also have it on the pottery. I think we can recognize what they're depicting here. This one is a photograph I took at the National Museum of Lima, which they said was 2,500 years old, long before we knew anything about dinosaurs here, or anybody here. A definite turvy fossil. Up in northern Peru, you have quite a bit of gold, a very prosperous society in the past, not today. That's another subject that would be interesting, but here is what we find in Peru, and turvy fossils all over the place. They tell us what the implication is, and there it is. We go down to Mexico, Central Highlands, in the middle there in Acambaro. We've been there at least 6 times now. with Dr. Swift, who is an archaeologist up in Portland. Over 2,000 ceramic dinosaurs in association with a much larger collection of critters. About 15% are dinosaurs, but they're all kinds. But I don't think we have to wonder what they're depicting here. This was dated by thermoluminescent dating and the cultural dating. The Chippewa culture is associated with it. They're buried together. Over 4,000 years ago, and some of them, this one was standing up. We didn't know about that. Spielberg convinced us they stood up, but that wasn't common knowledge, but it was knowledge 4,000 years ago down in Mexico. And the details are pretty amazing. We're looking here at an iguanodon. Now that's not the way he was depicted. One of the earliest dinosaurs that were found there in England, they all had tails dragging, and he was kind of standy-uppy. That's a technical term from a dinosaur digger-upper. But that's not the way this is. Today, we know it looked something like that, but how did they depict it? Look at that, tail straight out and a horse-like head. They got it right. Took us 150 years to get it right. But pretty obvious what they're looking at. Tail is not dragging. Very artistic, and some of them with a little license, but it's pretty obvious what they're looking at 4,000 years ago. This is my wife's favorite. The obvious implication is, yes, man and dinosaur lived together. You don't have to have both of them depicted to know that there was a man involved doing that. She didn't want to go with me to Mexico or Cambodia or over close to Iran, but we got some clues for France, and okay, you're going to Paris. Volunteer, yes. She was with me and a big help. There in the Louvre, you see Sir George fighting the dragon. And that dragon looks an awful lot like a T-Rex. They've stuck wings on him. Not all of them do. They have numbers of depictions there, but a little extra license. But with the scales and the claws and the teeth, I know what that looks like. This is the way it was depicted in Germany, this time without the added wings. I know what that looks like. You ask 5 or 6 year old around here, they'll tell you exactly what that is. Then down about 70 miles south of Paris, Chateau de Chambord, we have a royal hunting lodge built by Francis I back in the 14th century in my wife's backyard here. 700 dinosaurs carved into that, including the doors and the desks, and just pretty obvious. I think it's a Plateosaurus, as we'll see, and maybe breathing fire, kind of like Job described it. Or maybe that's part of something like the wings they just added. But overall, what do you call that? Well, they call it a salamander. Okay. I know what a salamander looks like, and that's not it. But here in the beautiful castle, you've got dinosaurs all over the ceiling in this gorgeous stairwell designed by Leonardo da Vinci back in the actually late early 1500s. You see in the ceiling surrounding it over 700 dinosaurs, all hunting lodge. I wonder what they were hunting. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? This is one of the dinosaurs on a ceiling tile compared with the Plesiosaurus in the Harvard Museum of Natural History. Wow, that's dead on. This one's over the fireplace. The symbol of the king. Yeah, if I'm going to get me a symbol dinosaur, yeah, that'd work. His wife's symbol was a porcupine. I'm not sure what that means. You go to Buckingham Palace today, and there's some work by Leonardo da Vinci. Critter look just like what you see there on the castle that he helped design, titled Cats, Lions, and a Dragon. Of course, the dragon's fictitious, the lion, yeah. These are critters that they knew about, and that's today in Buckingham's Palace by Leonardo da Vinci. Now, we go to Cambodia, up in the jungle near Siem Reap. No, my wife didn't want to go there. Good idea. Back in the jungle, here's one of the castles that they haven't fully restored. It was originally a Buddhist monastery dedicated in 1186. And you've got carvings all over the walls. The strangler fig is taking over part of it. They haven't tried to restore it. And on the walls you see monkeys, as you might imagine, and deer. And you see water buffalo, and you see parrots, some swans, and you also see, if you don't know what that is, you ask that 6-year-old beside you, and he'll tell you, that's a stegosaurus. They were seeing that 1,000 years ago in the jungles near Siem Reap. Obvious proof of the co-occurrence of humans and dinosaurs. In fact, I had one, quote, friend tell me when he looked at that picture, well, you got 2 dinosaurs in that picture. Don't need enemies with some friends. Arthur Stoller, professor of geoscience at Columbia, tells us what this means. Humans and dinosaurs lived at the same time. Such a finding would be a crushing blow. The hypothesis of evolution would be falsified. This is not an argument like most of the ones that we make. This, you can see, would fit better with creation. It reflects on evolution, but this one, you're trimming their toenails right under their chin. This cuts the throat. This is a do or die, as he acknowledges, and as many have acknowledged. Usually, well, we won't go into all the details, but here's Louis Jacobs, Southern Methodist University, who was president of the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology at the time. Evolution would be vanquished. We had some interesting discussions. Stephen Stanley, Johns Hopkins, that we quoted earlier, it would disprove evolution. Jerry Cohn, one of the most vicious anti-creationists around the University of Chicago, finding them together would be one of the ugly facts that could kill Darwinism. I'm kind of reminded of the comment that was made to Henry Morris after one of his lectures, the author of the Genesis flood we showed earlier. Don't you think this is kind of overkill? He said, I just want to make sure it's dead. And that would kill it, according to Cohn. Richard Dawkins, he really got upset about the challenge. Evolution would be utterly destroyed. It would be disproved. In Newsweek, he was quoted, it would blow the theory of evolution out of the water. Well, have we done that? If you've seen evidence of humans and dinosaurs together, I think we've shown tons of it, then that's what it means, according to the leading opponents. The evolutionary time scale depends on the assumptions that allow them to put that together, but the inconsistencies blow it out of the water. The Malachite man, the 11 human skeletons in the Dakota sandstone, the fossil footprints that we found in a half a dozen places around the world, dinosaur artifacts in Peru and Mexico, burial stones, pottery, figurines. All of this is just hard evidence, not theory, but proof that this explanation doesn't work. It is demolished, according to the leading evolutionist. Nova got excited about this. They came down, heard about the tracks. The photographers were convinced, and their editors would not publish it, but they did publish God, Darwin, and the Dinosaurs, a brief video where they denied there's anything like human footprints at Glen Rose. And then in that video, they said dinosaur footprints side by side with humans, which they, of course, completely deny. They show the implications. Finding them would counter evidence that humans evolved long after dinosaurs became extinct, and back up the claim that all species, including man, were created at one time. Right on. I don't agree with them that often, but I think they nailed it. That's why they had to say nothing like dinosaur footprint or human footprints there. It clearly speaks to creation and the Bible account. We have hard evidence that they cannot answer. And as you've seen maybe with the brochure, I gave you a list of some of the well over a dozen universities where I presented this material. You can imagine that they have some answers. It ain't so. I've given you good examples of the way they respond. It's a comedy act. I enjoy it. They have stopped doing it. We had a debate scheduled at UCLA a couple of years ago. They've not done that for a good while. The head of the department was going to debate me there in the geology department, auditorium, seat about 400. We put about 600 in that auditorium. I won't go into all of the details, but they did give out cards as they came in to get information about who was there. And we found out that 54% of them were creationists. They're the ones that wanted to hear both sides, see the evidence. And it had been scheduled for 6 months. They, not the head, no, we'd have got things. You really have a hard time scheduling something that presents creation evidence. 6 months ahead, okay, we'll take it. Finally got there. Students filling the auditorium, overflowing, and the professor didn't show. So I won. Spoke for about an hour, Q&A for another hour. Some of them stayed till midnight. That's the way they respond. He didn't even show, and they won't debate anymore. My wife says I enjoy it way too much, and it is fun. The first time you confront 20 geologists on the front row ready to pounce, it's a little intimidating. After you see them leave crying, some of them did, afraid he was going to lose his foundation grants. That's what he said. Anyway, we're having fun because we're following the evidence, and that's the way Christians do it. That's the way science. If you want good science, you follow the facts wherever they lead. If you want good religion, you follow the facts wherever they lead. Truth is what it's about, integrity. And that's what God chose, I think, before the foundation of the world. And you're one of his chosen if you do that. But if you ignore the evidence, turn your back on it, that's a different story. If you know that God sent his son and Jesus Christ is his son, you need to come confessing that. Repenting of your sins, being baptized into Christ, he'll wash away your sins and promise you eternal life, a home with him forever. The alternative is unthinkable. If you haven't obeyed the gospel, we'd encourage you to do that as we stand and sing.
There's a fountain free.
'Tis for you and me. Haste, so haste to its brink. 'Tis the fount of love, source above, bids us all freely drink. Will you come, fountain free? Will you come, you and me? Thirsty soul, welcome call. Fountain open for all. Rock that's cleft, soul is left, not its pure water share. 'Tis for you and me, stream I see, hasten joyfully there. Will you come, fountain free? Will you come?
For our visitors who are here tonight, we want to tell you how much we appreciate you coming and hope you'll come back tomorrow night as Don continues this series of studies on proofs of the Bible. Tomorrow night will be on the fossil records, and so come back. I know you'll enjoy it. As last night and all this week and one more night tomorrow night, for the parents who need to leave and take the kids and get them ready for bed for school tomorrow, we understand, so you can leave. But those who want to stay for the Q&A and ask any questions you have over the last 3 nights, we've had lessons here to ask anything of Don you'd like. He's going to take those on here shortly. So if y'all want to leave, mamas and papas and babies, you can. But the rest of us, hang around and ask questions. I know Don would really like to field your questions on some of these things. So hang around. I'll lead us in a closing prayer and then you can leave. Our Father in heaven, thank you so much for tonight, Father, for Don Patton and his ability to prove, Father, through geology and through these studies that you've given us your word, which is true and correct. And Father, you are the creator of all things. You are the healer of all things. And we give praise to you and praise to Jesus for the blood that he shed for us. Father, we're so thankful that everyone's turned out tonight for this lesson, and we're so thankful that we can grow in your word, and we pray that you be with everybody as we leave at this time and for continued studies tomorrow night. Bless us all, Father. Guide us in all the things that we do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Do we have a mic on? There we go. Lots of interesting people here to talk to, but let's see if we have some questions. All right. Dana?
My question is, how do fossils form in a riverbed like that? How is that powerful?
That's not the way it works. The river eroded down to where they were. They didn't form, and the riverbed had nothing to do with the fossils. I think this is a flood deposit. The fossils formed 4,500 years ago, and now then eroding down through the sediment that was deposited on top of it, they're now exposed. So the fossils had to form quickly, as we talked about last evening. I think it's basically like concrete. You're walking along in the concrete, newly deposited. It didn't take long to fossilize. The next rain would wipe them out if they didn't form quickly. So it was in the process of hardening. I think it had just deposited. Now, part of my dissertation was the formation of carbonate rock, and it is a deposit out of seawater. When CO2 comes out of solution, you deposit calcium carbonate. You get down in the Bahamas, storm comes over, low pressure, it's going to deposit calcium carbonate. Sometimes bars 50, 100 feet long, 30, 40 feet deep, and as wide as this room. You can just watch it in an afternoon. When you relieve pressure, that's what happens. Now, there was waters above the firmament, I believe, before. That came down 40 days, 40 nights, and popped the top on the earth. Kind of like a Coke can. You relieve the pressure, the CO2 comes out. That deposits. So you got layers of calcium carbonate. Some of those layers encircle the globe that we can trace. I think we can explain that. Some of the layers, like the Bedford limestone, the Empire State Building is built from it. A number of famous buildings, great building stone. Perfectly pure calcium carbonate from a layer about 1,500 feet thick that goes all across the eastern seaboard, over 1,000 miles, 1,500 feet thick. Pure calcium. Well, this is a local flood. Happens slowly. Well, it would accumulate gunk and debris and sticks and dead birds or what. Nothing like that. No fossils. It's just, it happened now when it was deposited out of seawater. Now, that's pretty unusual that you have non-fossiliferous rocks. Almost any sedimentary rock that you find is, you got fossils in it, billions of dead things. As Bobby was picking me up this afternoon, he caught me examining the rocks on the side of the hotel. And we found ammonites, several of the brachiopods, some coral. If you got a sedimentary rock, you're going to have fossils. You may have to get a magnifying glass, but it's there. Billions and billions of dead things and rocks laid down by water all over the world. So it was laid down. They walked in it. I think they were running from the flood, maybe from some of the dinosaurs as well, there at Glen Rose. I think we can tell which one was running from which. And then on up ahead, you see it opposite. The dinosaur stepped on the human track. Here, the human is stepping on the dinosaur track. But that was 4,000 years ago. Then the sediment piled up on top of it, and now then the river has eroded down to it and exposed it. Okay, good question. Yes, sir.
On the Peruvian burial stones, it's my understanding that when the Spanish were there, they took a lot of those back to Spain. Do you know anything about that?
There are records of that. The trying to think of the title, something journal, not Peruvian journal, but anyway, yes, and one of the priests made the journal and recorded that. And we don't know what happened to them, but they described that, and that was back a long time ago. Yeah. Dr. Cabrera lives in a castle that was from that period, where they built some beautiful colonial style buildings, and some of them are there in the middle of Mexico, which don't look like they belong there, but that's when they were built. Yes.
I've heard that that firmament that provided protection from the sun may have been one of the reasons people were living 800, 900 years plus back then. What's your theory on that? I know there's no way to prove it. But.
That's one among about 300 theories. I lean toward that, yes. Water's above the firmament. Then it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. There's enough water in the atmosphere to rain about 2 inches worth of water around the world today. That ain't going to happen. People read that understand meteorology and say, wait a minute, this is not real. Well, there was more water up there to start with, water above the firmament that I think came down, relieving pressure, maybe half the atmospheric pressure now that we did have, and I think that was a big factor. Hyperbaric chambers do almost miraculous things sometimes, and they were living in one that not pure oxygen or the pressures that they tested, but it was that effect. So we have cosmic radiation that bombards us every day. Your body feels a lot of those, and then your body repairs the damage done to your DNA as a result of that. Well, if you got waters above the firmament, maybe protection from that had effect on longevity. Maybe. Yes.
Is there any record of human remains found in a fossilized dinosaur?
In a dinosaur. Boy, wouldn't that be neat? Find him eating one. From my experience, if that had been found by an evolutionist, he would grind that to dust. We didn't have time to talk about some of the conflicts like that at Glen Rose. They've attempted to destroy that. We caught them in the act. No, I don't know of anything like that. If you watch Jurassic Park, you got a pretty good idea of why humans and dinosaurs don't normally get along together. And they're going to be apart if they got good sense. They live somewhere else. There's a bunch of lions running around out here. Now, I'm going to be somewhere else. You wouldn't go outside and let your kid outside if there's lions running around. And what did they do to the lions? We got all kinds of pictures in Sennacherib's palace, some of the Assyrian kings, where they're killing lions, and a dozen dead lions laying out there on the floor. I know what happened. They don't have them in there anymore, or in Israel anymore, which they did have. I think I know why. I think that's what happened to the dinosaurs as well. Sir George was doing his thing. And if you got dinosaurs running around here, you probably wouldn't, you'd want a big gun. And they wouldn't last long. Yes.
Based on the evidence that has been discovered, how recently does it appear that dinosaurs were still in existence?
Not sure they're gone. I can't prove that. But there's really credible eyewitness accounts.
Maybe like in the Congo?
In the Congo, Papua New Guinea. I've interviewed an evolutionary professor who, along with 5 grad students, were working on a volcano just off the southern tip of Papua New Guinea. And they came across 5 pterodactyls that were sitting on a log. And when they came up, they left. Now, what motive does he have to tell that story? It would demolish his position philosophically. But you got 5 grad students, it's hard to keep them quiet. They keep a secret. So he went ahead and told the story. It's like Mark Twain says, 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. So we heard of the story. And there's some other Roy Mackle was a professor at the University of Illinois who was researching in the Congo Makili Mbumbo, which he had been told about that several different tribes with different languages knew about. Used that. You'd show them a picture of a brontosaurus and they'd say Makili Mbumbo. Or they say, draw me a picture of Makili Mbumbo, and they'd draw brontosaurus. So he, way back in the jungle, it took several months to get to the lake in the middle where the stories had centered. And he said he saw it. He was in a rubber raft out on the lake, and one of them surfaced right beside him. And they scared each other to death, turned over his raft and his camera, went to the bottom of the lake. Maybe some of you saw the movie Baby that Disney made several years ago, 20 years ago maybe. He says they stole his script. He had written that. But that's an evolutionary professor. That's frustrating. Good eyewitness accounts. The swamp eats camera film. We don't do that now. We sent some very expensive night vision digital equipment fairly recently to Papua New Guinea for them to photograph some of these pterodactyls they're talking about. They were gone less than a week. Somebody stole them, and that's not a nice part of the world. You got spiders there that'll kill you in about 20 seconds. Interesting stories, but we're not there yet. We don't have the proof, but tantalizing evidence. Yes, sir.
What do you think, where did the water go after the flood?
Okay. It didn't go anywhere. We still got it. 70% of the Earth's surface is covered to a depth of an average of 3 miles. That's a lot of water. If it were only a mile deep, you got 70% covering 2 miles worth of water covering 70% that would be then over the continents. In other words, you raise the sea. It started out only a mile deep. At the end, to get rid of it, sunk down a couple of miles, over 70% of the surface. That's where it went. So it works just fine if you change the seafloor level. Seafloor, no fossils down there. Why is that? Because it's new stuff. It spread out, and you see that mid-oceanic ridge and the jigsaw puzzle fit on either side. This is new stuff. The fossils are on the continent where it was together, and now then. That lecture takes an hour normally, but there's a condensed version. Maybe we hadn't confused too much. John Baumgartner did his dissertation, and as a part of his dissertation, invented, I guess you'd say, developed a three-dimensional computer model for plate tectonics that shows that process happening and proved that it can't happen slowly, it has to happen fast. And what we're seeing now is just a residual movement, almost nothing. Almost every university in the country uses that model today, but they have to throw out the friction coefficient or it won't work. There's not enough force, or it requires force that would crumble the rocks with the friction coefficient that we know about. If you melt the interface from doing it fast, it'll work. They use his model, but they alter it to make it fit.
Are you talking about the plates?
Yes.
Around, and that's what separated
Exactly.
and let the ocean sink?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Precisely.
So you don't think that, like, there's been several of them out there saying that they're moving and gonna go back together and all this. I mean,
They're moving about like your fingernail is growing.
I'm going too fast.
As old as you are, maybe that's a pretty good, no, I won't say that. No, that's not enough. That's residual motion from going real fast, which is required in order to make it work.
So that's what the plates moving is what's causing like the earthquakes and the stuff like that, because it's so slow
Yeah.
that that's what's grinding and
Yeah.
that's what's causing it.
It's slowing down, but it's, yeah, barely moving.
So the malachite man that we saw tonight, the bones turned to malachite?
Yes, it's in the copper salts there in the open pit mine that will produce turquoise or malachite. They're salts of copper. And as we were talking about things leak in and leak out, this is going on, and it doesn't happen overnight. But yeah, I really tried to buy that jaw. Got up to $10,000, but he wouldn't turn loose. Yes.
What are they using to calculate time, and from where do you start? Steel carbon half-life?
And what?
I said, in calculation of time, where somebody says it's 10 million years and the other says 4,000.
Well, the answer is somebody that was there telling us what happened is dependable. And nobody was there 4 million years ago. But we talked about that last night, and if you want a detailed description of that, we'd have that online. We've mentioned Bible.ca is a really good website. I don't recommend everything, but it's good. Good friend of mine is the manager of that site. We're getting about 8.5 million hits a month. I think we're doing a lot of good. My portion is about a third of it. And you add /tracks, TRACKS, to Bible.ca, and you'll get to my section. Gets you to a landing page, about a dozen things to click. You click the projector, and that'll take you to the videos. And there's 16 that we did in a TV station there in Little Rock just 2-3 years ago. So it's pretty much up to date. 28-minute segments that you have to fit in. And tonight's session is 3 of them, 3 28-minute sessions. So there'll be a lot more. But on age of the earth, scientific age of the earth, there are 3 sessions. One of them is on radiometric dating. When you get past the flood, everything is wonky. That's a scientific term that says you look somewhere else. They can be useful for a few thousand. Can be. Okay, other questions? Yes, sir.
Since the word dinosaur wasn't created until like the 1800s, is it possible that what we think are dinosaurs are really dragons mentioned in the Bible?
Exactly. The word dinosaur was invented in 1841 by Robert Owen, who was the founder and prime mover of the British Museum of Natural History. Great historian. But that was 1841. King James was translated in 1611. That's like saying, why don't we have the word computer in the Bible, in the King James? That is not there, so proves we don't have computers. I don't know. Obviously, you had to have another word. The word dinosaur, the word dragon is used 35 times in the King James. I think they're talking about dinosaurs. You look at Job 40 and 41, the behemoth, the leviathan, have a tail like a giant cedar. Some have said it's a hippopotamus or an elephant, but the tail like a giant cedar. When he riseth up, the whole earth is afraid. His face is guarded round about with teeth, and even the most courageous look at him and scares them to death. They flee. Yeah, just look at Jurassic Park and you see what he's talking about. I think it's obvious. And the point was, Job, you're charging God falsely. And too many people just read the first chapter or 2 chapters of Job. The rest of the book is very interesting. And Job gets very bitter and has to repent in dust and ashes, which he does, because he sinned. He charged God falsely, not to begin with, but several times throughout the book. And instead of God speaking to him and saying, wait a minute, I didn't do this. You're getting mad at the dog and kicking the cat here. This is what the devil did. He didn't do that. He said, you need to understand who you're talking to. And he showed him all the wonders of the universe. The hydrologic cycle, you get water from the Gulf of America and dump it in the middle of Texas. You want to try that? God knows how to do. And a number of wonderful animals, and then Behemoth, whom I made with you. Look at that. And then look at the Leviathan, could be T-Rex, teeth round about his face when he riseth up the whole earth. King of God's creation. Don't think that was a hippopotamus. Then the point is, you're not going to go argue with T-Rex. You won't try to argue with his creator. T-Rex is amazing and awesome, but there's something more awesome. It's the one that made him. And he said, I get it. Now my eye sees you, and I repent in dust and ashes. Yeah, I think that takes something like T-Rex, and that's God's argument. And it worked really well. But great book. Other questions? Yes.
What do you know about the claims of giant skeletons, like humanoid giants and that kind of thing?
Nothing. No, not totally true. Been a lot of claims, a lot of descriptions. I have not been able to document any of them, of the really big. Now, Joe Taylor was a good friend of mine, had Mountain Blanco Museum, wouldn't totally disagree, but he would say, yes, we got giants. And he's got a big leg bone from Turkey that he would have been maybe 9 feet tall. And there's the bone. So that's as good as it gets. Most of them wind up being maybe 7 feet, 7.5. 2 of the ones they call Cro-Magnon men were found in Italy in a cave that were both over 7 feet tall. Now, a lot of people would call those giants. But we see a significant variation around the world. Most people are not as tall as we are. In Spain, the average height is 5'4". You got Neanderthal averaged about 5'10". Not real tall, but not real short either. Cro-Magnon averaged over 7 feet. Anyway, the stories that you're talking about, interesting. We read of giants in Scripture. The Nephilim, I think that's talking about good men marrying bad women. Sons of God married to daughters of men. I don't think that's angels. Angels are sexless. When I got married, I thought, boy, my wife is an angel. And then I learned a little bit more about angels, and I thought, nah, I don't think so. No, I don't think they're marrying anybody.
This Joe Taylor that you mentioned opened the museum in Crosbyton that you're referencing, correct?
I wasn't sure it was still open. He passed away. I came to his funeral, a couple of years ago.
Okay. you drive by it, you still see it in Crosby.
Okay, hopefully it's still open and going. It's got some tremendous information.
Gone, they've, the kids sold everything and got rid of it.
Okay.
It's closed down, it's gone. completely.
That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, you don't need to know any more about that story, but that's, yeah, I was wondering if it was still open. May still have a website up that was left over. Joe was a great scientist, great paleontologist. And many, many times, people would come to me, what do you think this bone is? I said, well, let me tell you what that is. Take a picture of it and send it to Joe. And Joe would say, and tell me exactly what it is, and then I'd look real smart, you know. But I did tell him where it came from, that information.
Wasn't Goliath supposed to be about 9 feet? Did David fall
I think probably a little over 7.
a little over 7?
Yeah.
I was just going by what they're saying, the size of the spear and sword and shield and all that, they were estimating it to be close to 9.
Yeah, he and some of our basketball players would get along just fine.
What do you attribute the 6 fingers and 6 toes to then? What do you attribute the 6 fingers and 6 toes to then if it's not fallen angels?
Well, that's still around today. We see it's a mutation that just multiplied what was already there. It's nothing really new, it's just more of it. It's a variation that we see. Some of us got hair and some of us don't, and that has to do with genetics, and extra toe sometimes is multiplying what's already there. All right. We appreciate you. We got one more over here. Yes.
With like colossal biosciences,
I just barely can hear it.
with colossal biosciences, where they're like making the mammoth like.
You're going to have to speak a little bit louder.
Okay. In colossal biosciences, when they're like making the mammoth like alive again, can they do that with like dinosaurs?
A lot of that in the news and a lot of speculation. And we've got some of the DNA. When they say they found DNA, that's a little, well, it's accurate. But the DNA that they find is not DNA like we got in live critters. It is grossly deteriorated. And so they have to multiply it and mix it with other similar critters in missing places, and they put it back together, manipulate it, and then they get something, but it's not exactly, but it's close. And they may be able to do that. It's not as simple. Now, the idea of finding it millions of years old in amber and recreating a dinosaur is, nobody that knows what they're talking about believes that. That's fantasy. But I don't think these mammoths have been gone that long. In fact, I'm not sure they're gone at all. I've got a good friend who was in Nepal tracing down rumors that there were mammoths in the jungle. And he said he found a herd of elephants, basically mammoths, but the leader of the herd, he said was a perfect mammoth. I've got pictures of it and video. He followed it around for about 20 minutes. And then at the end of the video, that mammoth turned around, looked at him, and pawed the ground and started toward him. And then the video goes. But it sure looked like there's some there. So they're not going that long, and they may be able to put something together as a clone. Other questions? Okay. We thank you very much for your attention, and hope to see you tomorrow night. When I have one lecture, but I've got, the one lecture I do what I do tonight. If I have a debate, what we're talking about tomorrow night is where I go. I think that is the most defensible position to follow. If you're going to prove evolution, you got to have the fossils. If you don't, you're just up the creek. I think we'll have some really impressive evidence. We hope you can come back tomorrow night.